Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I'm with CUGC HQ, and I'm happy to welcome you to today's CUGC Connect webinar with Goliath Technologies. They've done a few webinars with us in the past, and we're happy to have them here today talking to us about healthcare IT very specifically. So in a little bit, we're going to get into some use cases and some demos to target some of the issues that you guys in healthcare might see. Presenting for us from Goliath today is Todd George. He is a senior client implementation engineer. And we also have on the line Michael Clark. He's the VP of marketing at Goliath. So he's going to have a few words at the beginning and hand things over to Todd to get into all the technical nitty gritty. But before I hand things over to them, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today. Dan Schlemme is the CUGC Healthcare SIG leader, and he's also one of our newest members of our steering committee. And he's an architect at Novant Health. Dan, you want to say hello?
Hey, everybody.
Dan's going to keep an eye on all the questions for us today. So as we go through the presentation, if you guys can type your questions into the question box, he will keep tabs on those and he'll ask them periodically during the presentation. And then any of the ones we can't get to, we will either save to the end or we'll answer them offline afterwards. But so do definitely type your questions as you have them, and Dan will keep an eye on those. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Michael Clark to get us started.
Thank you very much. And Dan, I have to compliment you on that profile picture. That is awesome. I want to set the stage here a little bit about some of the things we're going to talk about and then get this over into the demonstration and use cases as quickly as possible. But, here at Goliath, what we're doing is we sell IT operations software that helps people anticipate, troubleshoot, and prevent end-user experience issues, regardless of where IT workloads or users are located. And in healthcare IT, we think that this really translates to improved patient care. A lot of times, the patient care requires access to EHR systems or other applications, and we help really, make sure that that access is there and working properly at any given time. There are some unique challenges specific to healthcare IT that I want to touch upon that I think we can address. First of all, one of the things we see is that healthcare IT departments often have a significantly reduced budget and headcount compared to their enterprise counterparts when you consider the number of users that's supporting. And so, there is an excellent idea of things facing many organizations of trying to do more with less. One of the things that we think we can do to help with that is our tool has these features we refer to as embedded intelligence automation that basically make the product easy to use. We show you what you should monitor, how to monitor it, what thresholds to look for, and really help you pinpoint root cause quickly so that you can identify problems. We help you be proactive and identify problems before your users are impacted so that you can fix them before the problem occurs. And we'll talk about those things in particular during the demo section. I also want to point out that we're talking about purpose-built modules for the major EHR vendors. Across the bottom, you can see we support Allscripts, Cerner, Epic, and Meditech. Cerner is actually an authorized Goliath reseller. They are out actively selling our product to their hospitals and customers. And in Epic, we're very proud to be listed in the Epic App Orchard as an improved troubleshooting and monitoring tool for end-user experience. In all these cases, what we're doing is bringing together the healthcare, the EHR performance metrics specific to that application, the VDI metrics that are specific to your virtual delivery infrastructure, and your end user experience metrics. So you get an end-to-end idea of where problems are occurring and how to address them. We've done this for healthcare over a long period of time. Some of our modules are newer as we talk to new hospitals and have asked us to build out new capabilities, but we have a great deal of experience with healthcare organizations of all sizes and across multiple different types of applications. This isn't new to us, and we have the relationships, many of these longstanding, that really back that up. So I've used the term end user experience issues a few times now, and we really see that as being driven by three types of things. The login initiation. Can I, in fact, get to the applications that I'm looking for, the virtual desktops that I'm looking for at all from my endpoint? In the demo, we'll talk about how we give you visibility into the very earliest stages of this process so that any of these problems can be uncovered quickly. The next step that we commonly see is people dissatisfied with how long that login takes. You constantly hear stories of people saying, well, I click the button and then I go do a bunch of other things and come back later to see if it's actually worked yet. We break the login process up into 33 or more stages, depending on particularly what you're logging into and how. And what that means is more granularity that helps you identify what specifically is causing these delays and help the IT professionals pinpoint and attack those issues. I see this as sort of a highway system. If you're stuck on the side of the highway, you don't want to say, the last exit I saw was 130, but I don't really know where I am after that. Or you can look over and say, I'm at mile marker 131.6. We're that more granular answer in terms of where that problem is coming from. And then the last point is session performance, where users are trying to use their applications over VDI, but they're seeing lag in mouse movement. They're seeing slow screen refreshes. It's very hard to type because of the lag that's coming in. And we have unique metrics that we'll show you in the demonstration that really pinpoint the true root cause of these issues. So as I said before, this really comes together with these three different areas. What is happening with your EHR application? What is happening with your end user experience? And what is happening on the infrastructure or VDI layer? And how do we bring all that together to understand where performance is indicated, where performance is impacted, where it can be improved, and how to identify and permanently resolve issues proactively. We do that with this idea of broad and deep visibility. We've talked about the different layers, and you can see this going from your VDI on the side through your applications over to your EHR modules as you move right to left. There are other tools out there that might see individual pieces of this, but we think that we have a unique value proposition of being able to look across this entire stack and identify specifically what's happening. Some of the free tools out there are more designed to say the problem is not in our section, which can be helpful, but it's not as helpful as actually finding and fixing the problem. So we have broad visibility to determine where a problem is occurring, and then we provide deep metrics and deep analytics that really help you specifically understand what within any of these stacks is causing the issue and helps you address it. When we talk to IT executives, we show this content and we find that it's really resonating. The challenge is often from the end user perspective, they blame whatever is on the screen. So when they're logging in to Cerner or Epic or MedTech, be it in their data center, in the cloud, in RHO, whatever it might be, and there's a problem, they tend to say, well, this has to be easy to fix because there's a direct connection from my machine over to the environment itself. And that's really not the case. So first of all, in most cases, that's going through some sort of data center, be it the hospital data center or a third-party data center, on its way back out to, in many cases, a double hop configuration to where it's located. That means you're using ICA or PC over IP blast sessions, depending on if you're on Citrix or VMware. You're going through firewalls, and then within the data center, there's a variety of components responsible for delivering this content back to the end user. It's further complicated by the fact that this is not all they're delivering. This same delivery infrastructure is also responsible for delivering a host of other business, healthcare, or IT applications to end users. We were talking to a Meditech hospital CIO who said they are delivering over 500 applications via their VDI to their users. And this resonated with him immediately as this is exactly the challenge. So that same pipeline is also carrying, all those applications back to the end user. And you can see there's a much more complicated impact or potential set of impacts on performance in these areas than just the straight line that many end users imagine. So here we help people anticipate, troubleshoot, and prevent these end user issues with end-to-end visibility from the end user through to the EHR application. And we not only do that for the HR application, but we do that for any virtualized application or desktop. That is it for me. I would like to turn this over to Todd and Dan to take this forward.
Great.
Gentlemen?
Thanks, Michael. Sorry, bear with us 1 second. I'm just flipping over to the demo environment. All right. So the first case study that we're going to talk about here is our UHS deployment. And UHS is a very large hospital organization that we've been working with for quite a number of years. They've been a client of ours since 2013. And they basically, something like $8 billion in revenue. So they're a very, very large infrastructure out there. And their infrastructure is Zen Desktop. They're delivering Cerner Millennium and Cerner's Patient Portal across that infrastructure. And they basically came to us with a couple of different issues. They had a customer issue surrounding their need for end-to-end visibility of their performance issues, all the way from their Cerner data center that was actually hosted in RHO, they call it. That's, for those not familiar, that's the remote hosted data center that Citrix has. So their RHO hosted Cerner infrastructure and their internal infrastructure where they were delivering a lot of other apps. They wanted to be able to identify the root cause based on the deep data that they collected from XenApp sessions, XenApp user sessions in the environment. They wanted to be able to integrate our technology with their existing Cerner management processes internally and be able to share intelligence. Once they wound up to the point where they confirmed that something could be relating to Cerner, they wanted to be able to have as much information as possible to be able to share with Cerner's tech support staff so that when they escalated tickets to Cerner, they would present it with as much information as possible and speed that troubleshooting effort from the Cerner side of things. So they were able to use our technology to enhance their ability to monitor a lot of their environment. They used our application availability monitoring technology to basically confirm that all of their locations were online, and also utilized our technology to make sure that things like their patient portals were up and running as well. Which was important because that was a key blind spot for them. You know, it wasn't relating to their employees and, you know, acute care, you know, physicians and medical staff that were logging in. It was actually patients that were logging in to that environment. And it was kind of a blind spot for them. When there was an issue, it was very difficult for a patient to call in and get that ticket escalated properly, if you could imagine. They also used our Goliath Performance Monitor technologies to basically allow them to manage their entire Citrix and Cerner deployment. They're utilizing Goliath Application Availability Monitor to launch something like 15,000 applications over the course of something like 3,000 different log-on validation tests per day. And we'll get into what that technology looks like, but just to give you an example on the map here, these blue dots indicate some of the different acute care facilities across the U.S. that UHS has. Those acute care facilities are running the Goliath Application Availability Monitor as an endpoint, logging into the environment through actual Citrix sessions, through the UHS and Cerner networks and data center environments to confirm and validate that when a real user attempts to log into the environment, they're going to be able to do so. If there is an issue with that environment, we proactively notify from an automated basis. So it's a notification coming from us, from our technology, saying, hey, this environment isn't allowing logins currently. And that gives the IT staff a potentially valuable amount of time prior to the issue affecting real end users in the environment. So you can kind of get out in front of it and check, to make sure that everything is up and running the way it should be. And that gives us, we also have the ability to collect screenshots as part of those login attempts. So what I want to do is show you an actual demo environment showing this technology. So bear with me 1 second while I flip over to this application.
We've got a question here about, is there a kind of a peak number of facilities that your technology can be used in? For instance, UHS, you mentioned they're across the states. Is there a peak number of facilities that that your technology will run in, or is it scalable no matter what?
That's a great question. We are scalable to quite high levels. We've got plenty of environments that are running very, very widespread deployments of our technology all over the world, as a matter of fact. We do have some key technologies built in as well to our product that allows us to kind of bridge the gap between different data centers and different specific environments that are out there. Effectively, think of it as like a proxying technology that's built in that allows us to kind of bridge the gap between different data centers, different locations, different facilities that you might manage and maintain, to basically be able to have all of this information flow back to our primary server, and be able to kind of monitor that your entire environment from that one single pane of glass.
One more question here too is, as far as remote hosted facilities, do you guys have any resistance with getting your technology in there, such as Epic or Cerner? I know some facilities are very touchy as to what you can and cannot do in their remote hosted cloud.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. For RHO, from a Cerner perspective, we are in the data center, but I do defer to your Citrix DeviceWorks representatives to handle some of the details there, but we do definitely have our technology in those data centers. For Epic, we are working upcoming, we have some very specific functionality upcoming relating to Epic itself, as far as being able to monitor their product. We also have some additional detail. We have some additional detail that we're collecting, and we are part of that Epic App Orchard, so that is also another crucial aspect of us being able to tightly integrate with Epic.
So when it comes to Epic, we're actually pulling system pulse data through APIs directly, and we're working. Our Epic customers have given us some specific requirements as to what they're looking for in that area. So that's an example, as I said before, of bringing together that specific performance metrics from the EHR system to add to the VDI and the end user experience information. We are also, as Todd mentioned, an improved application in the Epic App Orchard, so you can view us on there. I'm sorry, in regards to the hosted, we're in conversations at the moment with Epic and some of their largest customers about moving our technology into their hosted environment, as we've done with Cerner, but we don't have that finalized or announced as yet.
Great, thanks, Michael, and thanks, Dan. So as far as the Goliath Application Availability Monitor, this is the main dashboard for this technology, showing us the overall or average launch time of the different applications that we're launching on an automated basis, and showing the availability of the environment. The orange trend line indicates the availability of the environment. You can see that my lab is having some availability challenges today. But basically, let me show a quick video that we've recorded of logging into. I'll show you the Cerner and the Epic modules, or Cerner and the Epic environments that we've logged into. These are actually recorded from actual customer environments and show the automated logins. This happens to be a UHS recording here, showing an automated login to their Cerner environment, launching the storefront server, logging in as an actual user in the environment. These happen to be test users, but they're configured exactly like a real user. Ultimately getting to the point where they're able to launch their applications from the storefront server, and this is, again, completely automated. We're recording each step of this process from a timing perspective and from a success or pass or fail, basically, perspective. First thing we're going to launch is the FirstNet product from Cerner. Verify and validate that that launches successfully. If there's any issue with it, we're going to record that, send notifications out. Next thing we're going to launch is PowerChart. And PowerChart launches, we verify it launches successfully, close out of the applications and log off of the storefront portal. Once that log off happens, the information is transmitted back to our data set, to our server, and basically building the dashboards that we see here. Just to give you a quick example, I can also show an Epic login, and for the heck of it, I can show a Meditech login as well. This will be the exact same steps and same process, same information, basically going through the environment. These stages are all, again, recorded from a timing perspective and also from a diagnostic perspective to show exactly what transpired at each individual stage. This is also an enterprise-grade solution. There's no script hacking or anything weird that has to happen. This is designed and built specifically for the purpose and in use in enterprise. The UHS environment has something like 40 different endpoints to kind of build a little more discussion around the scale. They have something like 40 different endpoints that are launching these from all over the country. Again, as I mentioned, launching about 15,000 separate applications a day. And I'll just, for the fun of it, play the the Meditech module as well. So you see this logging in, again, exactly the same process, logging in using Active Directory credentials, finding the Meditech application and launching it, verifying that everything worked correctly, and reporting that data back to our interface and our technology. As I show here, we're going to go through the analysis tab and show a detailed breakdown of each individual launch. So this is each individual application, the different endpoints that have launched the application. And these will be similar to potentially locations in your environment. UHS actually has some environments, some of their locations that are so crucial that they've got a separate endpoint running at each individual floor of their location. So if there's an issue, they can identify specifically, a network switch that's down, for example, because that simulator keeps failing, just as one example. We have a lot of other performance monitoring capability around, SNMP and, ping tests and things like that. So we can verify a lot of different aspects of the network environment. But ultimately, what they care about is delivering an application to an end user via their Citrix architecture. So deploying that application to, via Citrix, making sure the users can log in, that's what they ultimately care about. So that's why they not only are monitoring from a variety of different perspectives, but then have that separate login happening from each individual floor of their more important acute care facilities. As those logins come into the environment, we're going to show exactly what transpired. If I click on the magnifying glass, we're going to show each individual stage of the process. We collect text-based information in a log fashion about each individual stage, so the authentication, enumeration, and app launch processes. Here's the authentication phase. But then more importantly, and sometimes really helpful when you're dealing with those Meditech or Cerner or potentially other help desk scenarios, you can collect screenshots of the actual problems. So if you have a random but persistent issue that might be happening in the environment, you get detailed information about what's going on through that login process. So imagine if you've got a certain scenario where every 1,500 logins something is failing, and you haven't been able to get a user to collect a screenshot of what's happening when that failure occurs. Server logs aren't showing anything. Getting details about what's happening on the endpoint is crucial, and that's a key part of the concept behind this technology. So you can see us navigating all the way through to navigating to the storefront environment, enumerating those apps, ultimately getting to the point where we're launching the AWS console in this case, and showing that AWS console launch in the screenshot here. In the case of a failure, we're going to identify the exact point of failure. I have a couple of different staged failures in my environment here. One of them is that this user is misconfigured, and it doesn't have access to their Internet Explorer application, and you can clearly see Internet Explorer is not available to them. This is a misconfiguration that we purposely built very specific to a use case that we had from Catholic Health Initiatives, another vendor, medical provider that we work with very, very heavily in detailed deployment of our technology in their environment. And they came to us and said, that they had an outage window scheduled, I think it was like 4:30 in the morning. They had gone through and made a bunch of Citrix changes. At the end, or toward the end of that outage window, their administrative staff had gone through and verified and validated that everything was working from the test accounts and from their administrative accounts. They brought everything out of maintenance mode, including the Goliath server, brought the Goliath server out of maintenance mode. It started running its application availability launches and triggering a failure. The failure that it was triggering looked exactly like this. It was indicating that there was a resource published that was not found for the user. It pointed the administrative staff directly toward what was going on, and they could identify immediately what was done, inadvertently done during that maintenance window that caused the issue. They were able to correct the problem. And they came back to us and said that that saved them something like 40,000 users having downtime the next morning. And they anticipated that it would take about 2 hours for them to identify what the problem was had they not had the direct vision into exactly what was going on. Obviously, they would have known it has something to do with the configuration changes made during that outage window, but it wasn't going to be the type of thing where they would get this direct level of correlation to show exactly what was going on. So they came to us and said, hey, you guys just saved us 80,000 hours of downtime in one in one identification. So naturally, these failures can trigger email alerts outbound. They can stay in the technology and show in the dashboards here. We can do SNMP traps. We can interact with other help desk and ticketing tools that you might be utilizing, and so on. Additionally, we're going to detect other failure modes. So if you have an issue with like a storefront server that's down in the environment, that will actually collect that information and tell you exactly what's going on from that perspective as well. And again, this is a completely centrally managed and maintained tool. All of the endpoints that you have configured are managed through the console. You can create new sessions, launch new sessions in Citrix, VMware Horizon, RDS, and the other is functionality for patient portal and things like that in Cerner. So we have quite a few different functionalities here. Scheduling is handled directly from here. All the interaction with the endpoints is handled directly from here. Scheduling different tasks, different launches is all completely centrally managed and maintained.
We've got a couple questions here. One question here is, what is the data retention limit for the product?
Data retention is up to the client. So whoever's utilizing the product can choose their own data retention policies. We don't have any maximum to that. There's no, we don't force any sort of configuration. There's no additional charge to keep data around for a longer period of time. It's basically just up to the user and how much data, how much storage they want to allocate to the product. But it is completely configurable and very granular to that configuration as well.
Okay. We've got another one here. Can this alert where printing is slow? For example, it usually takes 2 seconds to print. Now it's printing and taking 30 seconds. Can you see what is causing the printing slowness?
Yeah, we'll get into a little bit more of that, once we get to some of the other use cases. But we do track a lot of different performance indications, and printing and the printing channel within Citrix is something very specific that we do track and show things like bandwidth associated with print jobs and so on.
Okay. How much detail can Goliath capture from an unmanaged endpoint?
So unmanaged endpoints, basically, that's potentially a little bit of a wide question to address. I'm going to consider the unmanaged endpoint to be a Citrix-enabled endpoint, so something that's logging in via Citrix, and we'll show a detailed breakdown of some of the information that we collect from those endpoints. But basically, anything with a Citrix receiver that's logging into the environment via Citrix, or for that matter, VMware Horizon, we'll actually show a lot of details about that connection without anything additional on the endpoint. So it's not technically a managed endpoint, so it's not something that we've got our technology deployed to, but we can collect a lot of details about it. Now, the other side of that unmanaged endpoint discussion might be something that is a virtual machine in the environment, right? So maybe thinking outside of the workstation scenario, virtual machines, we have direct integration to hypervisor layer. So we can look at, VMware, Zen Server, any workloads that are out there and look at those and collect details and store those long term so that you can see information about how the hardware is performing. And again, that's even without our technology specifically deployed to VMs that are running in those environments. So we're capturing that information from a host level. Now, granted, deploying our technology into the actual Windows layer will give you a lot greater detailed vision into the Windows performance and the different applications performance in that environment. And that's where the real magic of our technology comes in, where you can have that full vision throughout the entire stack, from all the way from the hardware, hypervisor, all the way up to not only the operating system layer, but then the applications that are running within the operating system.
All right, one last question here. All of your demos appeared to be from the web portal itself. Is there any change of, capturing of the data from the web portal to actually using the full receiver itself?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit the last sentence there, Dan.
Oh, sorry about that. So all your demos were around the web portal itself. Is the data capturing any difference between the web portal and the receiver itself, the full-blown receiver?
So we capture. I'll get into a little more about what we capture from the receiver itself, and a little bit of those details in the next use case here. But the data that we capture from both a web portal perspective, so the web portal I'm assuming in that question is relating to our Cerner patient portal that I mentioned, or something along that line. That data is collected and pulled back to show the dashboards there. We can also do reporting on that data and so on. But when it comes to an actual user session, a detailed session itself, a real user session in the environment, if you will, we'll show the details about what we capture there as well. It is significant in the amount of data that we do capture.
Okay, I think that's it for now.
Okay, cool. I'm going to flip over to our PowerPoint just to go to the next slide here and talk through some of the different use cases that we have, and then I'll jump back to the lab environment. So basically, our next study is a top 5 nonprofit, and this was what I was talking about earlier, where they had the application availability monitor telling them that there was a outage window scheduled around 4:30, creating issues. But one of the other things that they wanted to look at were actually seeing some of the different performance issues in the environment itself. So they wanted to be able to get proactive about those issues that they were having through their environment. And let me just jump into the technology again. I'm going to jump right over to, sorry about that, bear with me. All right, so this is our application availability monitor again, but I'm going to jump into our views and app and desktop session display, and this gives a lot of details about each individual session that's happening in the environment. Gives you details from an app server perspective, showing how those app servers are performing, all the way down to this in-app server load metric, and showing how that's correlating to each individual app server in the environment. And then going to the published apps and desktop side, showing information about how the published apps Sorry, bear with me one moment here. All right, so this is going to show information about all the published apps in the environment. So each individual session that a user has open in the environment, being able to give details about not only what they launched and what they connected to as far as which XenApp server, but also showing those synthetic transactions as well. So we talked about the Goliath Application Availability Monitor. You're seeing the synthetic transactions from the Application Availability Monitor and the actual user sessions side by side in the same display. This data is both real-time and historic, so if I drop back a couple of days or a couple of months, we can see information from that entire process. And in my environment, it's pretty heavily those log-on simulators, because I'm really the only real person that's logging into this environment. So we do see quite a bit from the log-on simulators as well. And then over to the virtual desktops, very similar information, again, showing both real-time and historic sessions, giving you details about the logins that are happening across the environment, specific session-related information, and giving you details about how those sessions are performing. So again, showing, in this case, the VDI name instead of the XenApp session host name. So showing the current state of the session, showing the username that connected to the environment, and other basic metrics about the session itself. If we click through to any of these sessions, we're going to get details as shown here, indicating ICA latency, ICA round trip time, but then also, and this is a crucial metric and something exclusive to Goliath, we're going to break out the network latency and connection speed metrics from the Citrix receiver connection. And we're going to show that to you directly on the screen so that you can make determinations as far as where the troubleshooting effort needs to go. And ICA latency and network latency typically will follow each other pretty closely, but having vision into both is crucial from a troubleshooting perspective to really get an understanding of where problems in the environment might be coming from. We always know, as we mentioned earlier, Citrix, users will kind of blame what's on the screen. So if they see a Citrix logo, it's got to be a Citrix problem. And we all know that that's typically not the issue. We know that there's something else going on in the environment that's causing the problem. If it's a network latency issue or connection speed issue, those are crucial. And we've actually had a lot of clients, specifically one of our media companies that we deal with, had a lot of development staff coming in from overseas, and that development staff was able to determine they were complaining about performance issues, saying that the Citrix environment was very slow, and they were kind of escalating it to management. It was a big deal. what they were able to determine, the Citrix administrators had our technology deployed, and they were able to look at the sessions and say, no, you guys don't have enough bandwidth to be able to make a solid connection to the Citrix environment. They were seeing bandwidth in the connections that was under a megabit. They reported that back to the offshore companies, saying, hey, this is a problem. You guys have a real bandwidth issue. Those companies were able to upgrade their bandwidth and also deploy network monitoring tool, or network security tools that would allow them to kind of restrict some of the use of the network outside of the business tasks. So what they determined was that users were doing a lot of audio streaming and things like that, and they were able to basically shut that down, open up a little bit more bandwidth, and then they were able to directly correlate not only the fact that the bandwidth was better, but then that they were actually able to get better performance. The ICA latency metric was way down, and the connection speed metrics was up. And that was kind of directly referencing that, not only was the problem solved from a user perspective, but then they had the detailed reporting information and metrics to prove that that everything was working better. As we mentioned earlier, we do track logon duration down to a very granular levels, anywhere between the 33 and 50 stages of the login process, showing every individual stage of the initial startup, giving details about the delays associated with each of those individual stages of the startup, and then also showing what's happening on the delivery controller, each individual stage of the delivery controller during the login process, Citrix receiver during the login process, how long it takes for a receiver to process the website, for example, download ICA packages, things like that, all the way through to each individual stage of the process, showing the delivery controllers and Active Directory domain controllers, for example, that are responsible for logging into the processing a login in the environment, and then all the way through each individual stage through different group policies that are processed, different Citrix policies, and so on, showing delays associated with each. And then ultimately getting down to an ICA HDX channel breakdown, and this is where we talk about some of the printing from the question from earlier. We have full stats about printing to see if there's a delay associated with printing, see if there's an excess amount of bandwidth associated with printing, for example. So, did a print job spool out of control? Is that what's causing end user performance issues and delays? Giving information about what is actually taking up in the channel here, in each individual channel of the Citrix protocol. And we're going to talk a little bit more about scanning breakdown here, as well as one of our use cases. But one thing I want to point out is we also track the Citrix ThinWire bandwidth, and ThinWire is the Citrix software video card. So giving details about how much video traffic is going back and forth in the session to see if a user might be streaming video. We also break down audio bandwidth if it's utilized. This screen automatically filters out anything that's not being utilized by the session currently, or over the current session. But so things like audio will also show up, a variety of different aspects of printing or of channel performance in the environment. We also track vGPU performance, showing exactly what's happening from a frames per second perspective within the user session. Again, troubleshooting effort here. You're guiding and that diagnostic effort to determine, is it something your user's doing within their session that might be causing problems with performance, giving you the full vision and to be able to have those discussions with either other team members, on the IT staff, or maybe have the discussion with the end user saying, hey, we're seeing some stuff going on here. Can you explain to me about what your use case is, what you're actually doing inside of our applications, to be able to maybe tweak things and get them to work better based on what you're utilizing. We also track all the way down to the NVIDIA grid cards, so showing GPU compute utilization and memory utilization on those grid cards. Also tracking all the way down to server performance. Now, this server performance screen is really cool in the fact that we came in from a user session, so we didn't really think about any of the underlying architecture. And it's automatically going to correlate and bring information back from the underlying VDI or session host that the user's connected to. It's automatically going to show the exact timeline of the user session. So we've automatically isolated the view to exactly what's relevant to this user session. And then we're also going to combine information not only from Citrix, from the underlying hypervisor, and from Windows to bring into this screen so that we have all this information side by side. And we're going to basically correlate information about CPU memory and disk performance that relate directly to the user. And then we'll also track application performance and show exactly what each application is taking, like different processor, for example, that those applications are taking, utilization, CPU memory, and so on. So I'm going to flip back over to our PowerPoint just to go to our next All right, so our next discussion point is a scanner issue. This is a relatively new use case that was brought to us by a client, and they had some situations. They had a situation with they knew scanning was an issue in the environment, and they had delays associated with scanning affecting many users in the environment. They had a major event response based on this particular issue. So it was kind of an all hands thing. You know, IT was this was a real big deal. It had reached management level, and everybody was having a problem with it. So they were starting to gather information. They had gathered information about the PCs themselves, the applications. Level one network teams were reviewing data. The Citrix team was reviewing data. Applications team was involved, trying to figure everything out. Of course, no issues were found, right? So they weren't able to see any issues from the Citrix side. They weren't able to see anything from the applications or hardware side. Network infrastructure was saying everything looks good from our perspective. And the team continued to troubleshoot, really didn't have a whole lot of data to get to the bottom of what was going on. So their next step was a pretty big effort. They were going to go through every individual machine and attempt to upgrade the scanner drivers. And this was going to be a multi-week effort to get all the machines upgraded for those scanner drivers. So what they did was they used our technology to kind of look at some of the different sessions where users were complaining. And one of the things they noticed was a low input line speed under the connection speed indication. And they could also correlate when scanning events happened that IC latency spikes would occur because of the lack of available bandwidth. Now, that lack of available bandwidth was something new. They were actually able to correlate from days prior to show that the connection speed metric was actually good from an upstream and downstream perspective on prior sessions prior to when the issues were being reported. So they were able to take, as soon as they were able to pinpoint that issue, and have it, correlate exactly to when that problem was happening. They could see again across all of the sessions that input line session speed was low, and then they were able to basically work with the network teams, take that information to the network teams, and say, hey, on this date, what exactly happened? So they basically, the network team was able to come back and say, you know what, there was a change made, there was an issue, and an underlying, I believe it was a network card that they made a configuration change to, something with duplexing, something like that. Once they flipped it back, they were not only able to confirm that the problem was resolved, that users were okay, but as soon as the connection speed came back up, we were able to determine, you could see it directly in the interface that the connection input line speed spiked back to normal levels, and their IC latency dropped. When users scanned things, there was no longer an issue with that scanning scenario. So the upstream bandwidth coming from that client was just maxing out the connection and creating problems for those users. And this was actually, something that they came to us and said, Goliath allowed us quick resolution to this issue. It basically gave us data to successfully help us save hours and hours of troubleshooting effort where we would have been upgrading scanner drivers, which really would not have resolved the issue. So they, very quick time to resolution here, and provided verifiable data then, so that as they were kind of doing their, post-mortem on the case, on the issue, they were able to come through and say, this was directly related to the issue. When we made the configuration change that we recommended back to the networking team, they adjusted that and immediately saw a resolution to the problem. So, they kind of even had that back end of, for the reporting side of it to say, hey, this confirmed everything was up and running and was corrected. So wanted to talk through some of the different demo and free trial capabilities of Goliath.
Sure. So we mentioned our specific relationships with Cerner and Epic. There's information here where you can follow up with that. We can put you in touch with the right team at Cerner to talk to, or you can actually follow that link to see our products directly in the Epic App Orchard and engage with them there. We have demos and trials available on our website if that's of interest. And of course, we're happy to answer any other questions that Dan has or that have come in. Dan, do you have any questions or closing remarks?
I don't have any extra questions at this time. Guys, let me double check. Yeah, nothing extra at this time.
All right, that concludes our webinar for today then. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. Dan, thanks for helping us out with this. We appreciate your help and support.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys. You guys must have did a really awesome job of answering everybody's questions. For those of you who may have additional questions later on, we definitely have a thread in the CUGC forums that you can ask those in. This is, I'm putting it in the chat for you right now. This is also where we'll post the recording link afterwards and the names of the winners of the prizes. And then other chat window link I have for you is a very short survey. It is for CUGC use only, and it's coming now. There you go. And that's just to give us your feedback on the webinar today and find out about any other additional topics or webinar questions you might have for the future. So please fill that out. And I know some of you, when you registered, opted in for a chance to win an Amazon Echo spot and one of 2 Amazon gift cards. So we will announce those winners on Twitter. So be sure to follow us at MyCUGC on Twitter to find out the winners of the gift cards and the spots, and also to find out about CUGC events all over the world. So with that, I think that's everything we have for you today. I hope to see you guys on mycugc.org again soon. And Todd and Michael, thanks so much for your presentation. And Dan, thank you for tracking all the questions for us today. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Stephanie.
All right, guys, I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And you will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording for today also. I forgot to mention that, so keep your eyes out for that. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you back at mycugc.org soon. Bye.
Bye.